Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, has signed an agreement with the Zimbabwean government to invest at least $1 billion in the southern African country. The deal was signed after a meeting between Dangote and Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa in Harare on Wednesday.
There's been a strategic pattern within Africa in recent years, and it is gradually shaping or will shape the future of African economy if it is not being sabotaged by the Western elites. Cameroon is in a massive hole of debts, and the nation is struggling. The worst is that their government isn't even practicing full democracy, which you and I will attest to. However, before we dive into full discussion of this, let us go to Zimbabwe.
Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, has signed an agreement with the Zimbabwean government to invest at least $1 billion in the southern African country. The deal was signed after a meeting between Dangote and Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa in Harare on Wednesday, November 12th. Under the deal, the billionaire's company, Dangote Group, will construct a power plant, a cement plant, and an oil pipeline in Zimbabwe. Dangote told journalists that the pipeline would bring petroleum products to Zimbabwe and highlighted his company's plans to expand its $20 billion oil refinery in Nigeria to become the biggest in the world. The Nigerian billionaire previously visited Zimbabwe in 2015 during the administration of the late President Robert Mugabe, who was replaced by Mnangagwa in 2017. However, he abandoned plans to invest in the southern African country for unclear reasons. When asked why he is revisiting the investment plans now, Dangote said the current Zimbabwean government is solid and that there's a lot of transparency. It is not yet clear when the projects in Zimbabwe will be carried out and how much stake the Zimbabwean government will have. The Dangote Group has operations in 17 African countries, and one of its subsidiaries, Dangote Cement, is a leading cement manufacturer on the continent. Dangote's oil refinery in Nigeria has also made a huge impact on the oil industry in the West African country and has exported petroleum products to other parts of the world.
African leaders are beginning to tap from their own, and they've realized that it is better to revive their nations through an African. All development and resources will be circulated within the continent. Job opportunities, heavy investment and industrialization will speed up because it is Africans for Africans, or Africans for Africa, or Africa for Africans. And if you go through the interactive session, you will see that a lot of pundits applaud these moves, as only Africans will truly develop Africa while keeping the resources intact. Now let's go to Cameroon. Cameroon just joined the growing list of African nations that want Nigerians' footprints on their soil once again, this time around via Dangote. Like I said earlier, Cameroon is a massive debt and they keep borrowing to service other loans. Currently, this Central African nation is in a massive debt, and their only refinery, Sonara, shut down in 2019. Why? Due to a major or a devastating fire outbreak in the refinery which crippled the refinery since 2019 through now. So, Cameroon has relied on importation of petroleum products, which is being serviced in dollars, hence placing the economy in shambles. Recently, they started importing fuel from Dangote, which lessened the tension in their economy and brought a bit of an economic fresh air to the Central African nation. I'm talking about our direct neighbor, Cameroon. In October 2025, there was an awakening to revive the refinery. And how can that be done when the country is currently swimming in debts? Even the refinery had incurred hundreds of millions of dollars in debts.
The National Oil Refining Company of Cameroon, Sonara, once powered Central Africa's fuel supply. However, it was forced to shut down back in 2019 over an incident at the site. Cameroon became heavily reliant on imports, a situation which spiked fuel prices and also strained the country's economy. However, the refinery now says the road to recovery has begun and they hope to be back at full capacity by 2027.
We have all of us testify with our experts the good state of the main equipments. Indeed, we want to assure all of you that we will do all our best in our own capacity and with the help and assistance of the government, that our refinery should come back to life following the will of our head of state, His Excellency.
The 42,000 barrel per day Sanara refinery in Limbe declared a forced merger 6 years ago after a tank exploded and a fire broke out. Engineers say the rebuilt facility will be safer and more efficient using cutting-edge technology. They're betting on innovations like fire-resistant steel and advanced design software.
Everything is made of steel because what fuels fire is when there is wood, or in fact, anything that can ignite. But with steel, steel itself does not catch fire. And there is also the fact that it is hotly galvanized at 80 microns to resist chemical and atmospheric weathering. With the design software from the Dangote Group, we are ensuring the highest quality backed by world-leading engineering.
Sanara's reopening couldn't come too soon. For millions of people, it will mean cheaper fuel and other essentials, and also an ease on the overall cost of living.
Sanara's shutdown was not predicted. There was a serious increase in the prices of petroleum product when this happened. There was a serious price increase of petroleum product, which was really an increase that was not expected by the Cameroonian population. And when we talk about inflation, we are talking about a continuous increase in prices of basic commodities or other commodities that are being used. The government quickly readjusted and regained her ability to balance the distribution of petroleum products in Cameroon.
Sanara's revival also means jobs for locals, seeing the refinery's return as a lifeline for young people and the community.
The reconstruction of Sanara, which the population had been longing for so many years, it has finally arrived, and the joy is overwhelming. And so many youths who were hoping to specialize in chemical engineering, who were hoping to get jobs in Sanara, now there is hope. The operation of Sanara is our personal pride that a national oil refinery is located right in our neighborhood.
It's not just Cameroon that is expected to benefit. Other countries in Central Africa that once relied on Sanara for their fuel are also expected to see an economic boost.
Now you see, they promise their citizens that the economy of their nation will take a positive turn once their only refinery takes shape once again, despite not having a concrete internal means of revival. That was why on the 7th of October, their minister assured them that they would do anything within their power to bring their economy back.
You talked about Sanara, you talked about the port, you talked about this, you talked about this. I understood that those five, I have to take them into consideration. I am comfortable because I know that the Prime Minister is with me. That means that when decisions have to be taken, I go and see the Prime Minister and say, yes, do it. We have had some delays, but I don't want to enter into details. We have had some delays with Sanara. But I can let you know that we are going to do all what we have to do so as to rebuild Sanara. This is what I can tell you.
These hopes actually rely on one man, Dangote. Now, officials are exploring collaboration with the Dangote Group. That was why last month in January 2026, Sonara delegates, led by their chief executive, El Haj Bako Haruna, traveled to Lagos, and they were there for several days to engage in formal discussion with the management of Dangote. And they were focusing on the technical assistance, the funding, and the supply towards reviving the refinery. According to the delegate team to Lagos, they stated that the discussion or the negotiations are part of the blueprint. They're talking about the Paras 24, which is the plans or the strategy to ensure that the refinery resume operation within 2 years. And this involves an estimated cost of 291.9 billion CFA, which is approximately $524 million. Cameroon. Now, what for? Isn't that too much for the revival of such refinery, except you are including the debts that the refinery already incurred? Also, there is prioritization of rebuilding the infrastructure damaged in 2019 before resumption of full-scale production or full-scale refining, which is expected. Now, these are the negotiations. First, for Dangote to rehabilitate the refinery, refined products in Cameroon. So what they are saying is that Dangote isn't buying Sonara because that will be a different ball game. What they mean is that instead, Dangote will reconstruct or rehabilitate, stabilize, and commence production, while the nation gets some percentage in profit or in returns, depending on their agreement. Or if Dangote isn't ready to do that, Dangote can also give them some loans. So they want to source loans from Dangote to start their reconstruction in order to ease the capital constraints. So instead of going to IMF, they turn to Nigeria via Dangote to source for fund to start their reconstruction in order to ease the capital constraints for the refinery. And again, while the reconstruction or the rehabilitation is ongoing, that Dangote will keep supplying Cameroon fuel from Nigeria. If you asked me, I would say that with the knowledge of the history of the unpaid loans by Cameroon leaders or government, it is better for Dangote to accept the rehabilitation and operation within their nation than granting them loans. However, Dangote's board, in their smart move, stated that they are ready to work with Cameroon on the conditions that Sonara will first clean up its balance sheet. Now, let me inform us that the Cameroon oil refinery is currently in heavy debts of 479 billion CFA, which is over $500 million debt, which it's owed largely to banks and for distributors. You see, I told you earlier that Cameroon are fast in borrowing but slow in repayment due to the nature of its government, and that's a risk that no investor is willing to accept. So, if Dangote or any other investor tries any partnership with Cameroon without setting the record straight, the banks or other companies being owed will immediately sink their claws on the investor. Of course, they will be swimming in losses. So, if Cameroon wants help from fellow Africans like Dangote, they've been told to go and keep their house in order, settle all their debts with the internal helpers before an external investor will offer their help. This will prevent any future diplomatic unrest between two closed-door nations, that is Cameroon and Nigeria. I want to sincerely know your thoughts on this.